I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Donnie and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
I may not look like you and you me, but
my head up.
I'm from South Carolina, so I just...
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moss?
Oh, my heart.
Happy 20th anniversary.
My heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Donnie.
And dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh. I'm free from people, free from myself.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor, to the reverend, and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Donnie, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it all the more.
Letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. And I dare you, I dare you, I dare you to be you.
Good evening. First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. This is the Donnie Glover Show. Special thank you to STEM City USA and the other sponsors for keeping us on the air. That would include Dr. Tyrone Taborn, a genius himself, founder of Career Communications Group. He is responsible for STEM City USA and single-handedly helping to close the digital divide in Black and Brown communities. Tonight we'll be discussing the Key Bridge. Of course, 2 weeks ago, almost to the day, just 2 Tuesdays ago. So tomorrow will make 2 weeks that the Dolly, D-A-L-I, the Dolly, a ship that was managed by Synergy Marine Group and one that was chartered by the Maersk Group, and that's a Danish company. This ship, the shipping vessel, hit the bridge, hit the Key Bridge, one of the country's busiest ports, a bridge that is right there to one of the country's biggest ports. 6 construction workers died. So again, this was 2 Tuesday nights ago. Tuesday, March 26th, going into that Wednesday, the 27th. This ship was flagged in Singapore. It's my understanding that it had a similar situation, or it had an accident or something to that effect in the port of Antwerp in Belgium. It's almost a repeat offender, if you will. Here to discuss this tonight, we have the Honorable Carl Snowden. But before we get to him, let's check with our co-host to see how she's doing. Marsha Jews, how are you? Are you with us? Unmute yourself.
Yes, I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, your volume is a little faint. You muted yourself. I know you're mad. You got all prettied up, got your lipstick on there. The damn thing won't work.
I don't know. We're going to try and see what happens. Can you hear me? You can't hear me.
It's getting increasingly better. Why do you have earphones on? You never have those on. Why don't you unplug it, though? I think that's messing up your connection. There you go. Speak.
I can't hear you.
I can hear you. Okay. Let's get you going. Testing. Can you say something?
I don't know.
I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We will go and I can hear. Can you
Okay.
hear me? Can you hear me now?
It's vague. It's vague. But we have with us the Honorable Carl Snowden. And Honorable, how are you tonight?
Somewhere between fantastic and great. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and share some views regarding the Francis Scott Key Bridge.
Well, you know, you bring up a very interesting point. I just got to share this one last thing. As I was getting my notes together, of course, they did discover another body, I think a day or two ago. But here's a quote from the Synergy Marine Group website, and it's really struck me. It says, "This is next generation ship management software, which is MSA and regulatory compliant, or TMSA and regulatory compliant. It provides an integrated ship technical management system by harnessing business intelligence analytics in making data-driven decisions and forecasts." I don't know where all that damn IT was that night, but Marsha Jews, it wasn't visible at night. But
Not at all.
okay, but here's the angle from Mr. Snowden. Mr. Snowden, until you and this topic came up. It came up before for me, and I'm talking about Francis Scott Key. You are now and of course your icon there in Anne Arundel. This bridge touches Baltimore, Baltimore City, Anne Arundel County. You point out something so glaring, so overt, that Francis Scott Key was a racist. Why was the damn bridge even named after a racist? I am mad at myself that I didn't even think of that. Like, because we're thinking of life, the 6 lives lost, the others who almost died, the people by the thousands, tens of thousands who were traumatized just to see that bridge on television, and people get in their cars, and the next thing you know, whoop, they at the bottom of the bay, 187-foot drop, frigid temperatures, instant death. But you had to go and remind us of our history. Go ahead, Carl Snowden. You're a bad man.
One of the things I think Ms. Jules, you may agree with this, it's so important for our children to know our history. You know how many people don't know that Francis Scott Key was the brother-in-law of Roger Taney. Roger Taney wrote the infamous Dred Scott decision. People don't know that Francis Scott Key was a lawyer, and he wrote the following: "Black people are inherently inferior to white people." That's a direct quote from him. And so most people know him because he created this Star Spangled Banner. And that's what they teach our children every day. Star Spangled Banner. They teach them about the national anthem, but they don't tell you who he was. People would be shocked to learn that he had 75 slaves, personal slaves. They would be shocked to know that the original lyrics that went to the song really demean Black people. And so we have a responsibility, those of us who are living, to correct history. And we have recommended to a Black governor, Wes Moore, and the Maryland General Assembly, that you're in a position to rename the bridge. And we're recommending that he rename it after Pern J. Mitchell. Congressman Pern J. Mitchell is an icon. What Congressman Mitchell did, not just for Baltimore City, not just for the state of Maryland, but what he did for America should be recognized. And so here's an opportunity out of this tragedy to create something good for all Marylanders by renaming that bridge.
Here's the second stanza, the second half of the second stanza. "No refuge could save the hireling and slave from the terror of flight or the gloom of the grave." In other words, we're going to hunt you down, you slave, wherever you are, and we are going to kill you. And our ancestors said, no, you're not. We're going to kill you, you racist bastard. And the Star Spangled Banner in triumph doth wave. Yeah, right.
One of the things that make this discussion very difficult is that in America, we don't like to talk about race. Their black leaders, quite honestly, would not want to touch this particular issue. Very sensitive issue.
That's why I thank God I ain't got to answer to nobody in terms of getting voted or not getting voted. This is our job.
That's right. And we have a responsibility to hold our elected officials accountable. Black, white, Jew, Gentile, rich or poor. When people vote for people to get elected to public office, we should be emphasizing what Perrin Mitchell emphasized through his entire career. Perrin Mitchell was a public servant. He served the public. Too many of our elected officials want to be treated as mini celebrities. They want to have an entourage.
They ain't done nothing.
They want to be treated like rock stars. And the reality is, that's not how many people sacrifice to make it possible for them to hold those offices. So yes, we should raise questions. It will be uncomfortable for elected officials, black and white. But you volunteered to be an elected official. Nobody twisted your arm. And so with that comes a huge responsibility.
Yeah. How did you get in office and say, after you win the seat, you done lied? You know, it reminds me of a guy trying to get next to a girl sexually. He gonna tell her every lie possible, kiss her all up and down, and as soon as he score, he don't even call her no more.
That's true.
That's how we get treated, like second class. I'm sorry, Marsha. Marsha, you looking at me with a look. I don't know.
You already know what that look like. So we just gonna keep it moving because we already know. But the reality is that Perrin Mitchell was down in Washington handling his business, and I had the honor to have been married to somebody who was one of the lawyers there. And through Mitchell and Mitchell Law Firm, I was able to meet Perrin Mitchell and Uncle Pete. And so it was really wonderful to be able to sit at some of those tables with the Mitchell family and hearing all the things that were going on. But he had a spirit about him that let me know, and I didn't know these people, so I'm new in town, right? But he was a warrior. People don't really realize because he was very cool and calm and kind of laid back dude, but he was a warrior when he got down to DC. He did not play with people. And sometimes you'd hear these little, they call it ear hustling. I'd be ear hustling and he'd be talking some straight up stuff. And with that Congressional Black Caucus and his involvement and the leadership that he took, he made certain that all of those other Black congressmen were on board and understood the mission. That was the powerful thing for me. That was a PhD experience during those years.
Okay, so it hits you, Mr. Honorable Snowden, that the government, we need to put something else before. And let me just tell you this, Mr. Snowden. Last week we had on Captain Pegues, Captain Darwin Pegues, who is the only Black tugboat captain in the DMV. And he's trying to get a piece of that business. And we had Wayne Frazier on in that segment because we get it, Army Corps of Engineers, blah, blah, blah. But this is a 30% Black state. Baltimore, 65% Black, 75% Black and brown.
Yep.
I don't know the exact numbers in Anne Arundel County, but we want a piece of that bridge. We want a piece of that pie for our businesses.
Right. Yeah. And we elect people to public office who are supposed to look out for the interests of our community. Let me give you two quick examples of why it's important for us to understand where we are today. Not 100 years ago, but today. If you were to ask people watching this program the following question, if they have to be in Baltimore City, it doesn't make any difference, Prince George's County, Anne Arundel where I'm at, how many Black multi-millionaires are in your jurisdiction? And I can guarantee you the vast majority of African-American leaders don't know the answer to that question. If we don't know the answer to that question, how do we know how do we know how to build an economic structure? Now, let me use Anne Arundel just as an example. We had multi-Black millionaires living in Anne Arundel County. Some of them you know by name. Kathy Hughes lives in Pasadena in Anne Arundel County. She's a multi-millionaire. There's a man named Maurice Tozay, who is a multi-millionaire. And there are other African-American people who are African-American, who are millionaires and multi-millionaires. Well, that didn't happen by accident. It's not by coincidence. It's not by happenstance. The three great Black elected officials that I'm aware of in my lifetime did more to create African-American opportunities, which created millionaires. One of them was Perrin J. Mitchell. People forget it was Perrin Mitchell that put in what's called the Mitchell Amendment that created the set-asides. Marion Barry created more Black millionaires in Washington, D.C. than anybody else.
And then Maynard Jackson?
And Maynard Jackson. And here's what they did. They didn't have any affirmative action program, set-aside programs at that time. When Marion Barry got elected, he did the same thing that Harold Washington did in Chicago. He just simply said, I'll meet with anybody as long as it reflects the community in which I serve. So white developers in Washington, D.C., to meet with Marion Barry, they knew they had to have Black lawyers. They knew they had to have Black accountants, Black CPAs. Just by his leadership, he forced businesses to go out and recruit African Americans to be part of a team. And the one thing I can tell you about business, having been in business myself, businesses respond to the climate. Businesses will make the adjustments when necessary.
If they want to stay in business.
And they will, and they do it all the time. And yet, there's a tendency for us not to understand that. I'll use this example, Marsha, that you can appreciate. When the great race took place between former mayor Kirk Schmoke and then the acting mayor, Du Burns, who was running for the first time, most people thought that this was a race between two Black men. But if you knew the politics of Baltimore City, you knew it was between Jews and the Greeks. The Jews were supporting Schmoke and the Greeks were supporting Du Burns. The winner, obviously, was Schmoke. And if you look at who benefited economically, just follow the money. Right. So all politics is getting in the position to determine where public resources will go and who will get them. That's all it comes down to. And whenever other groups come to power, you see the manifestation of the economic flow growing. When Italians came to power, economically, they improved. When Irish came, they improved. When Chinese people come, Asian people, they improve. For some reason, when we get into political office, we begin to talk about, well, we got to take care of everybody. And of course, we're not talking about not taking care of everybody. But there is a way to ensure that everybody gets a bite of the apple. And sometimes symbolism is replaced over top of substance. People are so happy to be able to say, we got the first Black this or the first Black that, when other people look and say, how has that benefited us in our community? And they're very specific.
That's real, though.
Marsha.
You can see it.
Right. And again, this is a little history here. It's important people to know this. If you ask people living in Baltimore City this question, I already said, do you know how many Black multimillionaires are? And they don't. But if you would ask them, when was the last time there was a major uprising in Baltimore City before Freddie Gray? 99% of the people will tell you the last time there was this major uprising in Baltimore City was when Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 1968. The truth is, the last riot before Freddie Gray was 1979. People have forgotten. All you have to do is Google it, Baltimore riot, 1979. And if you read the story, as I have, very carefully, pay attention to what the mayor, who was a man named William Donald Schaefer, said about those people who were part of the looting. And then when you look at the Freddie Gray story, look at what the mayor, who happened to be an African American, said about the people who were looting. The language is identical, absolutely identical. But again, most people don't know there was, they've forgotten. Now, when they go back and look at it, they say, oh, yeah, now I remember. Because it was something odd about the rebellion that took place in 1979. And here's what it was. Most riots in this country is always associated with summer months, hot weather. The riot of 1979 took place in February of 1979 in Baltimore City, during what some said was a blizzard. Think about that.
So what was the reason?
The reason for the rebellion?
79 riot. What happened?
Same thing that has happened over and over again in cities, where police officers are viewed as overreaching, angry, and responding, breaking windows, went to stores and did some looting. But the undercurrent didn't change, which is why, again, if you go to Pennsylvania North, and if you were to take a photograph of Pennsylvania North today, right now, and then take a look at a photograph 15 years ago or 10 years ago, you'll see very little has changed. Now, why?
How you know this? You all the way in Anne Arundel County. You don't come to Baltimore.
Well, actually, I do. In fact, some of your viewers may know this. I actually lived in Baltimore City. I was the civil rights director for the Office of the Maryland Attorney General. So I moved to Baltimore City. And as a result of moving to Baltimore City, I was on St. Paul Street. I got to really see Baltimore, many aspects of Baltimore that most tourists will never see. And one of the things I quickly learned about Baltimore City, that's why I love Perrin Mitchell so. Perrin Mitchell was an elected official that people call PJ. You could walk up to Perrin Mitchell and shake his hand. You could see him down at Lexington Market. He'd have a conversation like we are. Wouldn't be anybody trying to block you from seeing him. If you had a problem, he would say, take my card and call me. Not my office, call me. I miss that kind of leadership that Perrin Mitchell exhibited. And even though he was from Baltimore City, for many of us, he was our congressman. He came to Annapolis. He worked with residents here in Annapolis. People couldn't vote for him, but people he came to give support to because he saw this bigger picture. And I miss
That's why we love you, Mr. Snowden, because you know the history, and we need this history. You feed us.
Well, let me share this with you. True story. I met a woman who helped me. I'll never forget this as long as I live. I am so proud to have met her. All of you know about Rosa Parks. We brought Miss Rosa Parks to Annapolis for a Black History program in 1984. Those who know the history of Mrs. Parks know that she got involved in 1955. She was 42 years old when she was arrested. When we meet her, she's in her 80s. So she comes to Annapolis, speak at a church called First Baptist Church, and you could hear a pin drop as she quietly told her story. Well, at the end of her story, a white reporter from the Capitol raised his hand and asked her the following question. Mrs. Parks, he said, why did you refuse to give up your seat to a white man in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955? And this Black woman, without missing a beat, in that very quiet voice, said, sir, you're wrong. You're mistaken. I did not refuse to give up my seat to a white man. I refused to give up my dignity.
Say that again. That's powerful.
Wow. And for me, what it meant was how important it is that people who live through events tell their own story. The way I had been told was she refused to give up her seat because she was tired and refused to give her to a white man, but she saw the much larger issue. This wasn't but no bus seat. This was dignity. And so it was Martin Luther King Jr., the night of her arrest, that said to her and the thousands who had gathered, Sister Rosa, it is better that we walk in dignity than ride in shame. For 381 days, Black people in a place called Montgomery, Alabama, refused to ride the buses. 381 days. And we did it as a community. There's a story that Dr. King is fond of telling about a Black woman who was up in age, and she was a maid. My mother, by the way, was a maid, so I could relate to this story. And they had agreed that nobody would use the buses. So she was walking on a hot August day to work for a white woman, and some white boys came by in their cars, and they started to harass her, taunt her. And they said to her, girlie, they never called you by your first name, girlie, honey, aren't you tired of walking? It's hot out here. Come on, get a ride, they said to her. And that Black woman, without missing a beat, turned to those young boys and said, my feet are tired, but my soul is resting. And that was the spirit of the movement. People had the ability to be able, despite the harassment, keep on going. And that's the kind of spirit of resistance we had in that day. And one of the things that I'd like to share with a lot of the listeners who may not know this, people assume that all Black churches supported Dr. King during the 1960s. That's just not true.
They didn't like him. They were jealous of him.
There was a Black minister, and you can look this up, anybody want to see this, who was then the president of the National Baptist Council. His name was Dr. Joseph Jackson. His headquarters was in Chicago, Illinois. He did not like Dr. King. And part of it was just jealousy. Dr. King, at 32 years old, was nationally prominent. Here he was.
Kind of like Jesse Jackson and Barack Obama.
Right. He's the head of the National Baptist Convention, and more people know Dr. King than he knew this man. So what happened was, when Reverend Dr. Joseph Jackson, when Dr. King was assassinated, he did not shed a tear. He was happy in some ways that he was no longer competing against.
Threatened.
But here's what happened. I'll show you how God works.
God don't like ugly.
After Dr. King was assassinated, the city of Chicago passed a resolution renaming the street that Reverend Dr. Jackson's church was on, the office building in Chicago. And to show you how much he hated Dr. King, he spent $250,000 to turn his building around so the building would not be facing the street that had just been renamed after Dr. King. Now, if that's not an indication of sickness, I don't know what else is. But we see it all the time, where, again, instead of people of color working together,
Some people, big brother.
some Black people, and it's just foolish. How much more we could accomplish if we just simply pulled our resources and work for the larger good.
Big brother, when you think about the fact that we are 13% of the population, even though our numbers are disproportionate in the prison industrial complex, just because they're 70% single mother households, when back in the 40s we were more married than any other community, despite undereducation, underemployment, and so on and so forth, and a litany of health challenges. Isn't it phenomenal when you think of the inventions we've made, to computers, to aerospace, to engineering, to entertainment, to sports, to law? You think of Thurgood Marshall, and now we got a woman, a Black woman on the Supreme Court. We got a Black woman vice president. Despite all of the negatives that have come against us, still, I think Maya Angelou said it best, still we rise, Marsha.
Period.
That is true. That
That's
is
right.
true. And we should take a
Right.
moment to really, as we approach Mother's Day next month, we ought to really give some thought to what women have done. Not 100 years ago, I mean, right now. It's incredible. Most people, if they're paying attention, will know the following. There was a black woman who forced Donald Trump to have a mugshot. All of the judicial system, all the white lawyers, all the prosecutors allowed him to get by. But in Atlanta, she said, oh no, we're going to
Not
treat him
him.
just like any other
Him.
criminal. And that's where the mugshot comes. But it don't stop there. Imagine a black woman in New York looked him dead in the eye and said, we're going to sue you. And won.
Yes.
And he
Got the
tried to
money.
steer her down, and she never broke stride. When I look at the courageous efforts of black women now, I'm not talking about 50 years ago, I'm talking about right now. It makes you understand why it was that we could survive. Let's think of the power. If I can tell this story very quickly, Marsha, you might appreciate this. It's a story that I just learned. And it was remarkable, and it has done something to me ever since I heard it. Frederick Douglass, as we know both, was born in Maryland. What I did not know until very recently was Frederick Douglass' mother, who was a slave, was on another plantation. Frederick Douglass was a young boy at the time, enslaved on a different plantation. Frederick Douglass' mother asked the following of her slave master: can I go and visit my son? And the slave master said you can only do it under two conditions. Number one, you must complete all of your chores. And anybody know anything about slavery? No, it was from sun up to sundown. They just worked. And number two, she said to her, that you have to be back by a certain time. Now here's the story. Frederick Douglass' mother walked 12 miles to the plantation that her son Frederick Douglass was on. When she got to that particular plantation, she only had enough time to hug young Frederick Douglass. She allowed him to sit in her lap for just a few moments. Then she kissed him and then walked back 12 miles. That's a total of 24 miles. Frederick Douglass wrote the following. He said, when first he got to know his mother. Most slaves never knew who their mother was.
They never meet their mother.
Because they were separated from birth. But he got to know who his mother was. And this is the part I love. He said that when she set him in her lap, he felt like a prince on a throne. He knew he was somebody. I said, wow. And that's such a powerful story. And if you can think of that, black women walking 12 miles just to hug a son. And I think of the women today, right now, under some of the most difficult circumstances, raising their children. People can say what they want, but if you really want, as Dick Gregory often say, look at the strongest person on the face of the earth, it's a black woman. Not an angry black woman, by the way, a nurturing black woman. And all of us who have had the experience of life know that there was some grandmother, some mother, some aunt, some sister who were there for us, even when we couldn't do for ourselves. And that remains true to this day.
Yeah.
I have to shift for you. There's a city councilwoman, the first black county councilwoman there in Talbot County. You may know her, Moon Ying Jackson Amos. And you also know that she channels Harriet Tubman. Now, I remember asking her back around 2010, 2012 or so about what Harriet Tubman would say about Barack Obama. And after some thought, she uttered these words. It was not about you. It was not supposed to be about you. It was supposed to be about us.
True.
With that backdrop, will the same be said of our first black governor?
No, I think for a couple reasons. One, I think some of us are very conscientious of, see, symbolism is important. I just don't want to ignore that. Barack Obama getting elected president of the United States was very important.
Huge.
But it's important in ways that most people don't recognize. Most people are worried about him getting the Nobel Peace Prize. That's not why it was important.
Can I give a question before you say it? Was it the imagery?
Yes. For 8 years, black children could look at a television set and see a black man, a black woman, and a black family.
In that
Nuclear family.
Those of us who are older, and I'm going to say this because it's true. I remember black people said, "Oh, they'll never elect a black man as president of the United States." Yo, are you kidding? They would say. But I would say it's people who don't know our history. You know, most people will tell you that had it not been for Jesse Jackson, there would not have been a Barack Obama. That's just not
true. It was Shirley Chisholm.
Shirley Chisholm, 1972. 12 years before Jesse Jackson ran, it was Shirley Chisholm who said, you know, we need black people to be at every leadership. And by the way, she was elected the first black woman in the House of Representatives.
And was serious and used her voice.
And that's right. And you know, she could have stopped there, but she said, "Oh no." And I happened to have campaigned for her, so I'm sort of telling my age. It was the first presidential candidate that I supported. I had the right to vote. And
was Fannie Lou Hamer in that picture?
No, it was. I'll tell you, there were 5 people, black people. One of them was Perrin Mitchell. The number of black men who were politicians who turned their back on Shirley Chisholm is unbelievable. And it was Shirley Chisholm who said she understood racism, but she said she now understands sexism better. Because sexism goes across all races.
All colors.
They were white, they were black.
All colors.
You know, there were black men that told her, "You can't be president. You got to wait, you know, tell a black man." And she just rejected. So I'm really, really proud to have worked for Shirley Chisholm. And even more importantly, I am proud that as we sit here in 2024, to have seen some of the changes in our lifetime, it's just amazing. And remember, Martin Luther King Jr., we just celebrated his 56th anniversary of his assassination. The majority of people who are watching this program have had the following experiences. And think of it, he never had this experience. Martin Luther King Jr. never saw a single grandchild. He was assassinated. We got to see in his grandchildren. He never seen any of his children get married. Things that we all take for granted.
How many grandchildren are there?
One.
One.
Yes, one. And that's by Martin Luther King III. And there's a reason for that as well. But the point is that he never got to do that. But neither did Malcolm X.
Right.
Malcolm never seen any of his children grow up. They made a tremendous sacrifice. Medgar Evers was murdered in his driveway in front of his wife and children. I mean,
so bring me back to our point. Will the bridge be renamed? You want it renamed after Perrin Mitchell, and there was a Richardson that you mentioned.
Right. Let me say this about Perrin Mitchell, and let me just say this about struggle.
Uncle P.
I understand struggle very well. And I know this is not a one-night event. I know there will be resistance and all kinds of stuff put up. But I've been around long enough, and I know that when a people are determined, and if we can energize and organize this community, we can make it happen. I'm old enough when people told me that there'll never be a holiday named after Martin Luther King Jr. And there was a group of us said, yes, there will be. There were people who said that a woman named Angela Davis was going to go to the death chamber. And there were those that said in 1972, oh no. There were those who said and believed that Nelson Mandela would die in prison. He walked out of prison into the presidency. So I know what's possible when we as a people make up our mind that we want to change. And quite honestly, I have never understood, and perhaps you guys can explain this to me. I've never understood why in a majority black city, we, black people, in leadership positions there, haven't created a Perrin Mitchell statue in downtown Baltimore. There's one of William Donald Schaefer.
Because we're selfish.
Yeah.
We want to celebrate people who have done nothing
Well,
nothing but giving speeches, and weak speeches at that.
Well, Brother Donnie, I would just simply say to you, as you said earlier, some of us are selfish, but I think the vast majority of black people in Baltimore City would be honored to have something in Perrin Mitchell's name.
I'm talking about these politicians who forget that service is the rent. This is what your generation taught me. The rent we pay for living.
Yep. Yep.
That you ought to hold the door after you get in the door.
It's true.
But these selfish sons of guns, they get in there, and before they have mastered one level, they want to get to the next level.
Well,
Say
true.
what you want about Schaefer, but you knew one thing: he wasn't gonna leave Baltimore.
Right.
His focus was right here, like it or not like it. But then you get an O'Malley before he became. As soon as he became mayor, he looking at Annapolis. As soon as he got to Annapolis, he's looking at the White House. It's like, damn, son, slow down.
He has big dreams. He has big dreams, and he's impatient. O'Malley wants it right now. Whatever it is, he wanted it right now. And now he's over Social Security. He don't know what else to do. But that's insignificant. I want to go back to this.
And that's the job for life, by the way.
I want to talk about this comment that you made about having a statue of Perrin Mitchell. I think this is an incredibly wonderful idea. And I'd like for us to circle back, because all that is just raise a little bit of money and make it happen. I think power is so wonderful. It's the power of it all. The story, his history is huge.
And where's the Harriet Tubman statue? We got to go all the way to Harlem to get a Harriet Tubman. I'm all the way down in Louisiana. I see a school named that. Where the hell is Baltimore?
But
I don't want no ugly statue. They did a statue of Billie Holiday that's butt ugly. Yeah. That woman was gorgeous.
Well, one of the things I think, again, that Barack Obama once said, and it's true, the change that we seek must begin with us. We have to take the responsibility. Here's one that's so clear. And for people who are hopefully watching this, they'll take the moment to do this. If you were to Google right now, the IRS audits black people 3 to 5 times more than anybody else. The Washington Post, the New York Times, they all did this story. It appeared last year. You Google it, and I ask people to do this. The story's going to pop up, and it's going to verify that black people are 3 to 5 times more likely to be audited than white people. Now,
that's because you're pretty.
Now let's think about that for a second. If black people only make up 13% of the population, how is it possible that we are 3 to 5 times more likely? Now, here's the answer, and I hope you guys are not offended by this, but it shows you the difference between a Perrin Mitchell and current leadership. If that had happened on Perrin Mitchell's watch, he would have done the following. He would call the meeting in his congressional district. He would have told black people that if you get this letter to be audited, here's what you need to do, and give leadership to it. I'm telling you that the vast majority of people watching this program probably don't even know that they're 3 to 5 times more likely to be audited by the IRS. Not 50 years ago, it's going on right now.
Well, we need to call Kwesi.
Right. Well, no, Kwesi needs to be calling us. He needs to be saying, listen, here's what you need to do. I gotta tell you, I had a problem. I emailed his office. I got an answer immediately. Good. Now, one could say it's because I know them,
But I will tell you something else, Mr. Snowden. It has prompted me to come up with a workshop, how to be an advocate for your community.
Right. But if you, again, just take the time to Google, you have to ask yourself two questions. Number one, for people who take the time to do this, how come I don't know this? They
Right.
published this. Why have not my representative, and by the way, not just Kwesi, across the country, none of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus informed their majority Black constituents of what I just said to you. And here's one that will blow you away. Donnie Glover, if you could just take a minute, if you got a computer, and just type in the following. Philadelphia, the city of Philadelphia apologizes to Black people. The city of Philadelphia apologizes to Black people. I want to show you something. As soon as you get it up, let me know.
I got it.
Could you read the first paragraph of that story?
One of the country's oldest medical organizations is apologizing for its silence on unethical scientific experimentations conducted on mostly Black people and low-income residents while they were incarcerated in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Can you tell them what the date of that story is? What's the date on that story?
1 second.
Okay.
Damn. From 51 to 74.
No, the date that apology was.
Oh, that the article came out.
Yes.
The article just came out.
When?
January.
January what?
Is it this year?
January last year.
Last year.
2023.
Now let me just, so our viewing audience can understand why I am so determined that our leadership be held accountable. The story, for those who haven't read it, you can take the time to read it, but the essence of the story is that the University of Pennsylvania engaged in unethical and illegal experiments on Black inmates who were illiterate and could not read or write. There's a principle in this country called informed consent. And it means that if you are operated on, you have the right to know what they're doing to you.
Like Henrietta Lacks.
Right.
Got robbed.
They admitted that they did not inform these Black men that they were being experimented on. But here's the worst part of it. Those Black men, 300 of them, would go home to their loved ones, and they would infect the loved ones. People would get sick. The story finally came out. They finally admitted that these experimentations should not have been done. But I want you to hear, if you read the story closely, at the end of the story, they say, other than an apology, no one will be compensated for the injuries and the damage that was done to this group of Black men. And here's the reason why. They said because of a statute of limitation has run out. Anybody who knows anything about law knows the following. There's one crime that has no statute of limitation.
Murder.
Murder. And these men who died from these experimentations were murdered. These women who were impregnated and had children that came out retarded, these are injuries. But nobody wants to talk about that. Rather, they want to give this apology in Philadelphia, which they did, in a story. You don't see nobody raising sand. And again, not to pick on any ethnic group, but imagine if you will, if someone,
the white girl that lost the NBA, the NCAA last night. Imagine if that happened to her.
You would
imagine if that happened to Donald Trump.
It would be an outrage in this country.
Imagine if it happened to who's that man from the 700 Club? Because he makes me sick every morning. I can't turn the channel fast enough.
Right. But again, it's us getting information. A lot of people don't even know about what I'm telling you. It's in the public domain. You got to slow down. You got to see what's going on. as you both know, maybe Donnie, I know you know this. Most people think that with the COINTEL program, counterintelligence program, where they were illegally spying on black leaders in the 60s and the 70s, and
including you.
yeah, and I was able to successfully file a suit against the FBI and won. I got my actual FBI file. I see what they do and how they operate. But many people don't realize that program continues today, just on a different name.
I
Right
know,
going
I
on.
know, because they took my Facebook page. I had 250,000 people.
It's going on right now. And
All I was doing was sharing basic facts. I'm not even the bad one. I'm the nice one. I'm the good.
right. In Baltimore City, for example, I wish people understood what's really going on in the city, politically, economically. I'm old
They
enough.
pushing us out. They got us chasing some red herring out Liberty Road. Meanwhile, down here in the hood, the white people are moving in.
Well,
They squatting, they buying these row houses, these vacants, but we want to move out to the county.
Donnie, in D.C., they have what they call the plan,
And those houses are worth $800,000 in D.C.
right, which changed D.C.'s demographic makeup. Well, there is a plan for Baltimore City. And it's not hidden. You can go and see what the plan says. And the plan is designed. By the way, both of you in Baltimore City, have you seen as many bike lanes in the city?
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my goodness,
About to
bike
start a
more.
fight up in here, Carl
Oh my
Snowden.
goodness, you need to change the subject because I've already been out protesting.
Yeah, my blood
about
pressure
the bike
going up,
lanes.
brother. Ain't
wait.
one damn bicyclist in a narrow lane from East North Avenue to West. Not one person on a bike.
What you're going to see, unless something changes in the city, the next phase is going to be dog parks.
Yeah.
You're going to see this increase of dog parks in the city of Baltimore as it is in DC. And when you see that, you will see the changes that will follow. It's very clear. And so our leadership,
We have an interesting comment here. This lady says, "Shut up." So let me help her see what she did not read about the Star Spangled Banner, because she said it should stay the Key Bridge.
right?
Poor thing. This is what he said. This is the one you endorse. Francis Scott Key said, "No refuge could save the hireling and the slave." Talking about your ancestors, Miss Berman.
And again,
From the terror of flight or glue, we gonna hunt you down like the dog you are. That's what they said about your ancestors. That's why it's important to know your history, because those who don't know it are bound to repeat it.
and also, again, we're not a monolithic community. I recognize that.
When everybody's in the bottom of the slave ship, it was very monolithic.
Well, that's true. But the point I was going to make to her and to all
when the clans came with them fires in them, we were very monolithic. I don't buy that, Mr. Snowden. It's like, back in the day, you could get black, white, or blue Jack Purcells. That's it.
Well, what I was going to say,
we got too many options today.
What I was going to say to the critic, when you tell people to keep quiet, to shut up, you don't know that you're doing something that inevitably harms your own community. You know how many people told Malcolm to shut up, told King get out of town? Just
now they got holidays.
But just let me finish the start to this lady. I just would ask her to consider this. I'm suggesting, she said that we got kids that cannot read. And that's true. There are people who cannot read. But what does that have to do with the Star Spangled Banner or the Francis Scott Key Bridge? What does it have to do with the fact that he was a slave owner? Should we just ignore that? Should our children not know who these bridges are named after and buildings are named after?
And what it means.
And what it means. I mean, what is wrong with asking that a bridge be named in honor of Kern Mitchell? And if you're a Baltimorean and you know any history of Baltimore City, you would see right away how logical sense that makes if you're a resident of Baltimore City. And here's the last thing I would say to her and others that people really need to understand. This is your tax dollars and my tax dollars. And I personally don't want to see my tax dollars going to subsidize racism.
Right.
Now, others may, but I don't. And I have the right as a taxpayer and a voter to express my point of view. And I'm going to do everything I can to persuade our elected officials of the rightness of the cause. And I'll share this with her and the larger audience, and I'm sure they don't know it. If I were to ask the person, what is the legacy of Kathy Pugh in Baltimore City? They would quickly tell me, well, it had to do with the fact that she got caught up in this scandal. And what they will not know is the following. It was Kathy Pugh was the first mayor of any large city to remove Confederate monuments out of Baltimore City. Most people have forgotten that. It was Governor Larry Hogan who used the tactics that she did in moving those particular memorials, these Confederate memorials. They did it at night and did it successfully. But people have forgotten that about her legacy because they focus on the fact of the negative. Most people don't know, for example, with Governor Larry Hogan, who served the state for 8 years, that he had an opportunity to do all kinds of things as governor that he didn't do. And now he's up to running for re-election or running for election to a United States senator. Unless you know people's history, unless you know the records, you may vote for somebody because you heard their name. I just want to make sure people are educated so that they do cast their vote. I've got a granddaughter. And
Mr. Snowden, I ain't heard nobody talk about black business. It's like I heard none of them, including what's that man said jigaboo, and they said it wasn't the first time he said jigaboo. The man with the liquor and the wine, Trump.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't heard anybody talk about black business.
Right.
Is something wrong with them? Are they retarded?
No, I think it comes. No, I come. When we have these, and we're going to have one in April, a congressional forum. We've got to have people asking questions.
A senatorial forum.
Yeah, and find out from those persons who are running for public office, because it's not supposed to be about them. It's supposed to be about the people they serve.
Who do you think served us better, Hogan or O'Malley?
Well, it depends on what better means.
Neither one.
From a standpoint of history, I can tell you what happened under Hogan. I can tell you what happened under O'Malley. Under Hogan.
I know black people got locked up when O'Malley was mayor. We got locked up like it was going out of style.
I can also tell you that occurred even under Hogan, which is why the state of Maryland has the largest incarceration of black men than any state in the union, including Mississippi.
Not like under O'Malley.
That's going on right now.
Not out of Baltimore City. Ain't nobody do more arresting than O'Malley.
Mm-hmm. And we as a community, we collectively as a community, have to decide where we want to go.
Right.
Let me say this with you, Mr. Snowden, since you throwing haymakers. That Maryland State Lottery came in 1973, $15 billion. And we still got schools with no air and no heat. I ain't impressed with none of them.
Well, Perrin Mitchell said at the time, again, this is what history will do. First of all, let me just make sure I'm real clear on this. Stop letting other people tell your story. Tell your own story. Now, here's what most people don't know. To be frank about it, your little Willie Adams out of Baltimore City was a genius. Make no mistake about it. Yeah. He was a genius. And here's what little Willie Adams and people like him were able to do in Baltimore City. When you talk about bankers, there were bankers in Baltimore City. There were people who picked up lots and lots of money in the black community with what was called the illegal lottery. Now, when the illegal lottery was replaced with, quote, the legal lottery, it was Perrin Mitchell who predicted that this would not benefit black people. This new lottery system that they were putting in place. Black men and women who ran those illegal lotteries and built homes and businesses suddenly found that no longer existed. And I just want to show you the parallel of history. You're living in a city right now. I see it every time I come to Baltimore. I shake my head. I look at the marijuana dispensers and where they're located. And
Yes.
blocks away from the marijuana dispensers,
Yes.
we got arrested for doing the exact
Yes.
thing that we've now given the
Mm-hmm.
civil rights of these entrepreneurs to do.
Mm-hmm.
There are Black people in prison right now as we
Mm-hmm.
speak
Mm-hmm.
who got arrested
Mm-hmm.
for dealing with marijuana.
And the buildings that they have selling them are like luxury places. So you get this gorgeous package. You've got all kinds of ways that you can smoke your weed. You got a parking lot out there. It's sitting right there on York Road, all big and fancy.
So,
You
Marsha,
can
what-
go-
Let me share this with you, Mr.
Wait a
Snowden.
minute, wait a minute. You can buy your weed there. But now our people standing on the corner opposed to understanding they need to put a building there and make that mess legal so they can make some real money. No, they're going to jail for a little handful of weed that don't have nothing to do with nothing. And they don't understand or see the bigger picture. That's a conversation we need to be having, because all those white boys, and there's some Black people owning some of those, that are not coming down and getting these brothers and sisters and showing them what to do.
Lady and gentlemen, we are out of time. Mr. Snowden, we hope that you made your point to the governor.
And thank you both for this opportunity. And Donnie, let me say, as I've always said to you, I respect the fact that you're one of those voices that need to be heard. You know, the easy thing to do is to get along, go along kind of reality. But when there are people like you who stand up, speak truth to power, and by the way, there are consequences for doing that. There are people.
Oh yeah, you don't get to eat. They cut you off. They don't let you get some business.
Well, they do all kinds of things.
They pull you over. They say you owe this bill.
But in the end, I'll just leave this as a lasting thought to you. For those of us who are believers, and I count myself among them, my mother, who died at 104 years old, told me something I have never, ever forgotten. And my mother was a maid. My mother said, son, there is a power in the universe that put wetness in water, blue in the sky, and allow birds to fly. She says, son, as long as you understand who's really in charge, we're going to be all right. And despite all of the stuff that we've talked about, all of the oppression, all of the exploitation that we've gone through, as you said earlier, quoting Maya Angelou,
still I
we
rise.
still rise. We still rise. Thank you again. And
Yes,
God
sir. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Good evening, world. Thank you.